Story 1. This is something that happened to me in 2009. I tend to forget about it for months or years at a time, but every so often the memory comes floating back. This is only the second time I've ever actually written it out. Be me. Be a Minnesota suburb. Go to the mall one day. Sitting in the food court by myself. Guy comes with me with a clipboard. Offers me $15 to take a survey. Why not? He leads me to an employees-only entrance. Inside is an office with a small reception area and another room where I can see people at computer stations. Lady at the desk has me sign a stack of paperwork. Tons of fine print. Have to initial in different places. All of this seems rather elaborate for a $15 survey. I'm starting to feel unsettled, but also intrigued. They take me into the computer room. I have to take a survey with my demographics and consumer preferences, pretty basic stuff. See pictures of fake products on shelves and click the products that personally appeal to me. Woman takes me down a hallway into a small room. Literally nothing in the room but a chair, a large projector screen, and a table with a laptop in the corner. Woman stands at the laptop and turns out the lights. The room is now pitch black except for a single white dot on the projector screen. I'm supposed to follow the dot with my eyes. Woman says to relax, breathe, and focus on her voice. I'm literally being hypnotized by a stranger in a shitty back office at the mall. Now a grid of 9 squares comes onto the screen, each one numbered. She says to focus on the 9. Focus on the 9. Don't look at any other numbers. She repeats this process with each number, in random order. At this point, my memory goes blank. I do remember seeing another CGI image of store shelves with various products, but I don't remember how long it took or what else I had to do. I believe at some point I was calling out numbers also. Finally, the survey is over. I get my $15 and walk out wondering what the hell just happened. Well, X, it's been over 10 years. But do I have anything to worry about? Story 2. I live in a small city in northern Mexico. The oldest part in my city is claimed to be the territory of witches, and previous to that, it was Apache territory. The area during this time was comprised of at most 10 families. As decades passed, more families would move in, but essentially that means that until the 90s, a lot of the people living there were from a very small pool of families as kids, and they would grow up and build a home not far away from the rest of the family, as one of those families was my mom's side. The story begins with my great-grandma's sister, who, unlike the rest of the family that was Catholic, Christian, or Abrahamic in some form in general, was known to be a witch. Family rumor states that she became a Satanist since the 30s, and not long after that, became extremely rich. It was suspected she committed incest with her own sons since they were kids, and raised them to be wizards. By the 50s, her own sons also became rich, but all of them died of some type of cancer during the 60s. In 1980, my grandma, who was 29, was summoned by my great-aunt, since she needed the youngest adult in the family, and my grandma's sisters didn't count because they hadn't had kids on their own yet, and they weren't really adults. Grandma decides to go help the old woman, which, by that time she describes as grotesquely deformed due to arthritis, morbidly obese, and with an awful stench and asthma. Accompanying the great-aunt was a shaman, who gave my grandma a silver ring and told her to put it on and never take it off no matter what. Days passed and things got weird. For example, during the mornings, the family would wake up to notice small lumps of salt and dirt surrounding the house, which, by the way, was still close to the rest of the family in that same area of the city. My grandpa, who came from the other town, bought a big empty lot there and spent the next decades building a house. It was the biggest area that belonged to anyone in the family, and it was said that one night the great-aunt had buried her treasure there. Another night, my mom and uncle, about 8 and 10 back then, said they heard Apache Indian ghosts dancing in the backyard. This kept happening until one night when my grandma noticed the ring was turning black and it was staining her finger. guessing was just a shitty cheap ring, she decided to take it off to inspect her finger. At that very same time, my uncle, who was taking a shower, suddenly heard someone slam the small bathroom window. My mom, that was in the backyard playing, said there was no one on the other side. And again, almost at the same time from the street, someone yelled, "The work is done." My grandpa came running to kick someone's ass, but there was no one there. About 15 minutes later, people from the neighborhood came to tell my grandma about the great-aunt's demise. I don't know if there's still witches there, but it's hard to imagine considering how much that neighborhood's changed in 30 years. Story 3. I've only had 3 sort of paranormal experiences, and since I'm still skeptical, I'm hoping one day I'll see something that's truly unexplainable to the point that it would pass the James Randi Paranormal Challenge. I mean, like, without a doubt, there's no denying that what I've just seen defies any and all scientific explanation, to the point where I can honestly say I've just witnessed something that's impossible. This is as close as I've gotten. When I was a kid, my room suddenly became engulfed with flies, so bad that they were pelting me in the face and my body as soon as they flew around, and they formed a sort of fog, so it was difficult to even see across the room. It took me all day to kill them by just spraying cans of Raid in the air and picking the last ones off with a swatter. The same exact thing happened a few years later in a different house, but this time it was the whole house. But freaky as that may be, what if there were just a bunch of maggots somewhere that hatched at the same time? I know flies are real, and although I can't explain how they just appeared, it's not like their corpses came back to life or suddenly vanished, so I've always been on the fence with that one. I saw my cat stand up like a person and just kind of chill. When she saw me looking at her, she went back on all fours, and I swear that since that day, she looks at me like a person would. If there's anyone else around, she has a normal cat look, but most of the time it's just her and me, and then she'll do the look. Maybe my cat's just unique in a weird way, and I'm reading into it too much. It is a cat, after all. Lastly, I once heard a woman's voice say, "Make fast," when I was home alone. I know I heard it. It wasn't a dream, but the only explanation that would make sense was that it was a hallucination. Maybe I have a very mild form of schizophrenia or something, where I've only heard one auditory hallucination. I guess that's about it, aside from a few creepy coincidences. Story 4. Uncle lived with me and my folks growing up. I was about 10 years old when I found him dead in his room. Took his own life. Box cutter. The walls, the floor, even the ceiling and ceiling fan had blood on them. I remember standing in the doorway, screaming, Dad rushing over to see what was the matter. The thing that sticks out in my memory most is the ceiling fan on high, spinning and creaking repetitively overhead. Then it's all a blur. Fast forward. Uncle's funeral comes and goes. The old room is cleaned and emptied of all furniture. Door to his room is always kept closed. Nobody goes in there for months. I wake up from a terrible dream one night. In the dream, I'm standing in Uncle's doorway. He's sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at me, wrists slashed to hell. His arms are abnormally long in the dream, so it makes him look even worse. Ceiling fan creaking repetitively, spinning above me. Creak, creak, creak. I sit up in bed. I'm awake now, but I still hear that sound. Creak, creak. I lay there a second listening to it. I'm not imagining it. For some reason, I slip out of bed and into the hall. Looking back, I didn't feel in control of my own body at the time. I approach my uncle's bedroom door. I can hear the ceiling fan spinning loudly, clear as day. The image of my uncle from my dream pops into my head. Picture his long arm reaching over to open the door. For whatever reason, I turn the handle. Push the door open slightly. Peek inside. Empty. Look up at the fan. It isn't even on. Creak, creak, creak. I suddenly panic and try to close the door, but at the last second I feel someone tugging it from the other side, preventing it from closing. Abandoned ship. Rush to my room. Jump under the covers and think I hear the door close, but my heart's beating in my ears, so maybe I imagined it. And lay there for a long time listening to the creaking sound, until I pass out from exhaustion and fear. Story 5. B16. Guy from my class throws a birthday party. Flirting with sad and hot friend. Phone rings. It's the neighbor saying there was an accident. A guy left off his scooter, bringing a girl I knew with him. We run to the place thinking it's nothing serious, laughing. We see the scene and we stop laughing. Blood is sliding down the street. She died instantly, smashed her face against a parked car's wheel hub, jaw obliterated. Start crying and try not to puke. The guy comes to and starts screaming, "What have I done?" Plus pain from broken pelvis, both femurs and multiple ribs. She was a wonderful person. Story 6. I have a ton of ghost stories that nobody believes, but I'll tell one for now. When I was 8 to 9-ish, I don't really remember how old I was, I lived in a farm in East Washington. It was 20 miles from the nearest town. I was surrounded by wheat fields. I was downstairs in the basement playing Skylanders on my Wii when I heard a tapping on the window. The window was one of those really tiny basement ones. I looked at a black hooded figure with a skull face and red eyes tapping on the window. I walked closer to the window and got a good look at it. I thought it was my stepdad doing a prank. I laughed and told him to stop. It pointed at me and motioned for me to go outside. I went upstairs to see that nobody was home. I freaked out and locked all the doors in the house, then hid in the attic till my mom came back. I still have no clue what that was. Story 7. Be son of somebody who used to have a minor modeling career. She could have been really famous, but she got pregnant with me instead. She's an alcoholic, and while still really beautiful, can't actually get a man that she's interested in. She sometimes murmurs in her sleep that she hates me. Once, she'd sleepwalk around the house with a kitchen knife saying that she wanted to kill my dad, whom I've never met, and me. Story 8. Be me. Fresh out of the womb. Born dead with an umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. Mom never told me how I survived. Mom turns white as a sheet when I found out about this years back. Most of the time, I'm extremely cold to the touch. I've had to contemplate on the fact that I might be a product of necromancy or something for years. It's weird and stupid, but it's something that's always followed me around at the back of my mind. Story 9. Mess with divination stuff as a tween. Parents discover I've been doing this and get rid of my stuff before I can end the ritual. Start having sleep paralysis for the first time ever. Upstairs with Mom. We're the only people home. Go downstairs to grab something we left minutes before. The gas stove is on. The fire. I'm outside of the house with friends playing on the street. Mom shouts for me to go home. She stays outside the house in the garden and asks me to go look around every room. I do so and there's nothing untoward, but for some reason I'm afraid. She refuses to explain what happened. Several years later, she agrees to tell me. So Mom was making dinner and hears a sound in the hallway. She goes to the hallway. Clothes on the radiator start falling off one by one and moving away from her. The door to the living room opens. This reclining chair that we had that spun around starts spinning and slamming against the wall. And that was when she ran to the house and called for me. My face went. I remember actually seeing the mark on the wall and figuring that it was me or my brother who had done it by accident, and that we were lucky that our parents hadn't somehow noticed. Story 10. Relaxing with friends on a Canadian island on the west coast. This was around 2015 at a friend's grandpa's cabin. Sitting on a chair his grandfather made, who was in the Canadian Intelligence Corps during World War II. Chair ornately carved with military symbols. Grandson's having a smoke with us. I ask him about the chair. He tells me his grandfather served all over during World War II in the Canadian Intelligence Corps. Told him one story when he was young that scared the Christ out of him. His grandfather served in Italy when the Canadians invaded Sicily, then Italy in 1943. Sent on a mission with 2 other intelligence corps members to gather intel in a small town where German soldiers were located. Middle of the night. Pitch black. The 3 men, including his grandfather, see something that should not exist when monitoring the town. After reporting back to their superior, he sends them back to high command to be interrogated. Basically told them, "You will never say anything about this to anyone, ever." Soon after, one guy kills himself. Another ends up in an insane asylum. But his grandfather, for some reason, is unfazed and just never told anyone what he had seen, and died over 90 years old. Grandson randomly tells me this as I'm sitting in the chair that his grandpa built. I always wondered what exactly it was they saw. Was it Germans maybe collaborating with allies, or some sort of otherworldly horror? Story 11. Year 2000-ish. Walking down a gloomy corridor at West Suffolk Hospital. Snarling woman bursts through the stairs and snarls a wicked smile at me. 2 people walking close behind her. There's nothing behind her eyes at all. They're just void. Scurry the hell along like a Scooby-Doo cartoon dash. Later find out that that woman was probably Myra Hindley. Story 12. In Mexico, driving at night on the road to Juarez from Chihuahua. Thought I could go through the 3.5-hour drive in one go, but ended up feeling too tired to actually drive safe. Parked my car on the side of the road and get to sleep at about 1 a.m. For about 20 minutes or so, no cars pass by. Don't think much about it, even though there's, usually big trucks and cars going back and forth between both cities, but whatever. Drift off to sleep. Likely started to dream. Suddenly, awoken by this loud as hell sound of a car crash happening next to me. It wasn't just loud, though. I felt it rumbling all around me. Look around me and see nothing. Get out of the car and see nothing. Too spooked to sleep now. I get back on the road and eventually I make it to my destination. Probably a hallucination or something, but I can't explain how real it felt to me that some big hunk of metal had crashed close by. Story 13. Why the hell not? This one still gives me goosebumps. About 10 or 11 years old. Drifting off to sleep around 11 p.m. My bedroom is next to a little study room with a hallway. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I see a silhouette with long hair walk from the hallway into the study. Figure it's my mom going to turn off the light. Light turns off, then on, then off. On, off. Weird. I decide I'm going to ask my mom what she's doing. I wait for her to come out of the room, but no one ever does. Call out to her. There's no answer. Total silence from inside the study. I look and there's nobody in there. Lay in bed freaked out for hours, just watching the hallway. No one ever comes out of the room, and I finally pass out from exhaustion and stress. Story 14. I still think about this one sometimes. Leave the house to get groceries. Less than a block away from the house, this guy starts walking next to me. Looks like a normal college-age guy. Wears a Letterman jacket. Don't think much of him until he starts talking. He says, "I am death." I thought he said deaf and just say something like, "Oh, okay." He says something like, "Do you wonder when you're going to die?" By this point I realize I'm either talking to a schizo or the actual Grim Reaper. For some reason he also said, "God is a Taurus." I make it to an intersection and cross the street just to get away from him. Never see the guy again. Story 15. This is a memory I have from when I was around 6 or 7, so not really young nor old. I used to spend time with my dad in the rural area he was from. He was a simple, hard-working country guy, used to farm work and a simple lifestyle. Also an alcoholic, but in general, a good man. Be me. 6 or 7 years old, as I mentioned. Hanging out with my dad. He drove his pickup to a relatively isolated piece of land he owned. He would do random chores like cutting up wood, checking hunting trails, and so on, and would take me with him so I would learn and be able to help him. This time, we're just sitting in his truck doing nothing. It's getting dark, so we have to go back home soon. He's just finishing his 40, keeping it safe, and looking through the windshield as the night falls. "Look over there, Anon. Look. Firebirds." "Huh?" See a bunch of raven-like birds flying around shooting small fire beams out of their beaks, like in a synchronized dance or something. Continue to look at them in awe for a couple of minutes. Dad finishes his beer and drives home. As incredible as it sounds, I thought nothing of it and actually kind of forgot about it. Months later, I asked my dad about the Firebirds. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. My face went. He was a troubled man in his youth as well. When I was older, like 11 or 12, I started calling my dad Crazy Old Man as part of a game. We were used to jokes like that, so it didn't seem disrespectful to me. One day, my mom talked to me and asked me to stop calling him that because apparently some old girlfriend of his tried to make him go insane. She didn't give me more details, but here's the story. 30 or so years ago. Dad was a sort of handsome man. Not quite a Chad, but he was charming to women. Had his fair share of girls, or so I've been told. One of them is a crazy bitch, though. Apparently, she was or knew someone who was into black magic stuff. I assume Dad got what he wanted from her, or just got tired of her, so he dumped her ass. The girl got butthurt and threatened him. "You will go crazy for me." Months later, Dad got really sick. I'm talking heat strokes, delusions, weakness, etc. His family thought he was going to die. One day, he just stands up from his bed and goes to the kitchen and confronts his family members aggressively. Grandpa and uncles try to calm him down. He had one older brother and 3 younger ones, but somehow overpowered them all. They're all freaked out. He gets in my grandma's face, tells her she should fear him. She's a very religious woman. Tells him she can't fear her own offspring. Dad throws a heavy-ass sewing machine across the room and storms out of the house. Comes back several days later wearing the same clothes. Doesn't happen again.